Hello out there, you're welcome to the newspaper review here on TAF TV, where we give Nigerians the opportunity to air out their views regarding headlines that are making rounds. Remember, you also can be part of this show. Do want to follow us up on all our social media handles, and if you're yet to subscribe, come on, subscribe so that you get notified each time we drop videos like this. Now, before we hit to the streets, let's first look into the headline and see what the headline has for us this very morning. Today being the 11th of July 2024, first we're considering the Punch. And the bold headline here on the Punch says, federal government project massive food price crash come January. Details of that is found on page 2. Sub-story under here reads, Labour meets Tinubu insists on 250 minimum wage. Details of that is found on page 28. Local government funds. Supreme Court decides federal government suit against governors today. Details of that is also found on page 28 of the Punch newspaper. Reps panel quiz minister unleash 1.5 billion naira division. Details of that is found on page 14. Ex-accountant general begs for time to refund lot funds. Details of that is found on page 28. Moving on, still on the Punch, on page 28, it says, Tinubu swears in 8 permanent secretaries. Big congratulations. You can read that up, like I said, on page 28 of the Punch newspaper. Federal government to unveil special directorate to Niger Delta security. Details of that is found on page 18. Edo task force arrests suspected human trafficker. Quite a sad one. Details of that is found on page 5. Pro-Wike lawmakers, seats remain vacant. I won't present budget, says Fubara. This is becoming very interesting. Details of that is found on page 28. Alright, now moving on, we're considering the New Telegram. And on the front page of the New Telegram on page 3, it says, federal government lacks of clear fiscal policy distributing. Details of that is found on page 3. Naira devaluation. Nigerian banks drops in global ranking. Details of that is found on page 26. CBN sacks ministers management team. Appoints acting managerial director. You can read that up still on page 3 of the New Telegram. Now, sub-story under the New Telegram here reads, Tinubu orders review of inherited road project and others. Details of that is found on page 2. Conflicting orders. NUC to deal with earning judges. Details of that is still found on page 2. And still on page 2, we are seeing hardship. Tinubu disclosed his door to ministers, NIS members. Details of that is still found on page 2. Alright, moving on, still on the New Telegram, it says, insecurity, threat to 2024 census, and says NSA. Details of that is found on page 2. Amewele, 24 orders, seats remain vacant, says Fubara. Details of that is found on the New Telegram on page 3, 4, and page 5. Sub-story under here still reads, call criminals by their names. IPOBs tell Nigerian army. Details of that is found on page 28. Why Tinubu established livestock ministry by AGF. Details of that is found on page 5. Supreme Court to deliver verdict on local government attorney suit today. Details of that is found on page 5. Alright, now lastly for today, we're considering the nations. And the bold headline here on the Nation says, Fubara to Amewele, orders your seats remain vacant. Details of that is found on the front page of the Nation newspaper. Court rejects EECD request against Southeast customers. Details of that is found on page 5. FEC directs SGF to implement Versities lecturers removal from IPPIS. Details of that is found on page 2. Body of ex-Senate President Wales flown home from UK. You can read that up on page 30. Emefele, wife not signatories to account used to move cash. Details of that is found on page 4. Now moving on, sub-story under the Nation says on page 5, President meet NLC, TUC, leaders on wage. Details of that is found on page 3. OT reverse command promotion. Details of that is found on page 5. Alright, lastly for today, we're seeing on page 4, it says, fix East-West Road, release NDDC's 2 trillion naira arrears, Niger Delta leaders tells federal government. You can read that up on page 4 of the Nation newspaper. Now, there's quite an interesting story here on page 4 and page 5. It says, Supreme Court rules today on council attorney. Enugu to establish 8 colleges. You can read that up on page 5 and page 4 of the Nation newspaper. All right, that's all we have for you this morning regarding the headlines that are making rounds on our newspaper. Let's hit to the streets and hear the reactions of Nigerians regarding these headlines. Do well to stay tuned. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
It's good to have you here.
It's a pleasure.
All right, thank you very much. Now, quickly, I would like your thoughts on the punch that says, Pro-Wike lawmakers, seat remains vacant. I won't present the budget. Now, says Fubara. You know, as of late, our house members that defected to APC still want to maintain their seats as house member, and Fubara is saying that their seat remains vacant. Do you think it's okay to actually place it that way?
I subscribe to Governor Fubara because Section 109, if I'm right, had defined the manner through which, Nigerian democracy, especially the defection of lawmakers, should be done. And indeed, in Rivers State contest, the defection was done without recall to the position of the law. Obviously. So based on that premise, I posit that their tenure has gone on. So there should be a call for INEC to call them to order and possibly set a timetable for re-election. Because it's an aberration that people declare that they are no longer
obviously
of a member of PDP.
They made it openly.
There were visuals to that effect. To come back and again to say they didn't defect is an aberration, is a taboo, is an omen, is an unwanted, democratic culture which is not permissible, and we will not take that. So they have gone and they have gone for forever.
Please, what do you think is the motive that is driving Martins Emewele and the other house member? Do you think that there's some level of some level of should I say a top backup from the top?
No, it's a quest for power. It's a quest for power. It's a quest for power. So, and in Nigerian democracy, this is a nation we have seen that a lot of issues are playing to the gallery. Of course, that societal malady, yes, societal cankerworm, has become Nigerian culture. Of course, you see, wealth without work, pleasure without conscience, obviously. Knowledge without character, politics without principle. We have elected people who are supposed to lead us, but rather than leading us, they are looting us. We have elected people who are supposed, to change the narrative of Nigerian system and political system positively. They have become, epitons and vehicles for, changing Nigerians. So we are, of course, going to banana public if nothing is done to change the narrative. So I must say that these ones who have defected without recall to the position of the law should go back to their villages and new election should be called. Right. That is my position, and that is what I want to say today. I've recommended that. So Nigerians, of course, that we do not obey. Many people do not obey the laws, and because they have those who are finding the embers of crisis for them, so they are there playing to the gallery. That is my position.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we've come to the end of our newspaper review here on TAF TV. You've been opportune to hear what Nigerians got to say regarding the headlines that are making rounds this very morning. Remember, you also can be part of the show. Do well to follow us up on all our social media handles, and if you're yet to subscribe, please subscribe. My name is Eyo Keme, and this has been the newspaper review here on TAF TV. Do well to take care of yourself.